Start streaming, and we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Two Nerds in a Pod, Episode 3. I am Mr. Nice Guy 425, one of your co-hosts.
And I am Maction, your other co-host. It's good to have you here. We hope that you are excited for this podcast, ranging about over everything from gaming to pop culture and basically anything else that really strikes us.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Now, Mac, I gotta know, man, how was your week this past week?
Well, definitely interesting. You know, sometimes I wish that my own personal, stories from like work and such really counted toward the dummy of the week, because there are some times where I've got some really good ones. And this week, one of those moments, slapping your head repeatedly in frustration at the just sheer madness, the sheer lunacy of some people.
Now, is this one that we can share on stream, or is it one we should not share on stream?
Well, strictly speaking, because most of the time when I deal with it, if it like stands out, it usually means that there's like something serious to it, so
Understood.
I probably shouldn't share it. But what I will do is I will talk in some very general things.
Let's hear it, yeah. Tell us about your friend that had something crazy happen this week.
Yeah, so my friend had something crazy happen this week. And let's say, hypothetically speaking, I had this friend, and this friend told me this story about someone. So this friend deals in contracts, right?
Okay.
You know, contracts between people. And do you know what something's called when there's a contract that's signed by one party but not signed by another party? Do you know what that?
I don't know. What is it?
It's called a piece of paper. And what it isn't is it isn't really a contract, or it isn't really a binding contract or anything like that. So, but even more funny is that the situation that makes this so fun is this friend of mine sent a contract to somebody for them to fill out and for them to fulfill some very specific items, sign some things, make a payment of a certain amount, and so on for the contract to take effect. Well, the other party didn't actually send the contract back, didn't pay what they had agreed to pay in order to start up the contract and begin the terms of the contract.
Sure.
And then made this big long thing and started off on the wrong foot by being antagonistic towards my friend.
That's a great way to start.
And then carried on by telling them that they were going to be unable to actually pay that amount, but that my friend should still go for all of these terms, all of these things of the contract, because they were willing to make good faith payments. Now let's just add spice to the pot, and let's say that that there's been no payments made for 3 months. So yes,
sure.
On the promise of potentially future things, it's this is the type of amusement that just goes.
You just got to slap your head with that. That's
yeah, you
ridiculous.
just got to be like, The best part, though, is when my friend gets asked to break the law on behalf of somebody else because they're in a bind.
It's unbelievable.
That's the fun one.
Unbelievable. For those of you guys who are going to be listening to this after the fact, every time Max said friend in that story, there were air quotes involved. Just so you can get that visual while you're driving on your commute or whatever it is. Well, other than that, was the week solid, Mac? It was a decent week, I assume.
Yeah.
Right?
Other than that, it was a solid week. I've discovered some games that I've been playing a lot lately, which we'll get to later on.
Yes.
I watched some great shows, which we'll get to later on.
Me too. Yeah.
And there have been some cool things happening in the news
It's a good time to be a nerd. I would say 2016 is maybe. I know in some cultures it might be like the year of the lion or the year of the bear. I think it's the year of the nerd for guys like me and you. And I think 2017 is going to continue to be that way. Very, very good time for nerd culture.
Mm-hmm.
My week was solid too, man. Doing the stand-up thing. In fact, did a couple sets last night. And I did this new bit that I've been working on about how it annoys me when people check your receipt as you're leaving a store. It's just I think it's unnecessary. You know what I mean? There's cameras everywhere. Like, they know if you paid for it or not. They should only check if they know that you stole. And anyway, I did this new bit, and I won't do it now. But yeah, I modded you, homie, Whiteside TV in the chat. And so at the end of my set, the audience was like silent the whole time, right? And it was just one of those you know, I don't like to blame the crowd as a comedian, but the crowd was just kind of passe, you know. I got a few chuckles here and there, and then as I'm leaving the comedy club to go do another set somewhere else, there's these other comics outside who I have seen around. They're kind of experienced in the Chicago scene, and I was like, see you guys later. And they were like, hey, man, that was an awesome set. And I was like, well, thanks. But I feel like as comedians and as people in general, we should stop congratulating mediocrity. Like, I didn't have that good of a set. Maybe as comics, they could see, oh, yeah, this has potential. Like, you were really killing it if the crowd would have been awake and not sedated. But anyway, that was my stand-up experience from yesterday. It was a good experience, though. It was good. Good work, new material.
So just so I'm clear, you think they were giving you the sort of pity, good job, man?
No, they were sincere.
Good,
they were sincere,
okay.
Actually. They were legitimately congratulating me. So I'll take it as a compliment. Because as a comedian, you can see it. You can see a comic up there bombing and say, "Oh yeah, this guy is good," or "This girl is good." The crowd's just not into it like they should be. So maybe that's what they were saying. I won't read too much into it.
I hope so.
Everyone who's new, welcome to the stream. Once again, this is Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest podcast in the galaxy. And should we jump into that news, Maction?
Absolutely. Let's do this,
and it
Mr.
is
Nice
episode
Guy.
3, you guys, so we have not been banned yet from Twitch, and we plan on keeping it that way. Well, guys, it's time for the gaming news of the week. I'm Mr. Nice Guy 425, if you guys did not know, and I will lead us off with the gaming news. First story from GameSpot, written by Chris Pereira, titled, "Another Pokemon fan project in the works for years is almost ready for release." It says, not long after fan game Pokemon Uranium launched, another fan project, Pokemon Prism, is rapidly approaching its release, and you can play it right now, sort of. As detailed in a recent trailer below, this is on GameSpot if you guys want to look it up, Prism has been in the works for nearly 8 years. It features a new story, more than 200 Pokemon, a new region, and the ability to play as one of your Pokemon, among other things. That's pretty cool, I think. It's designed in the style of a Game Boy Color-era Pokemon game, but features 60 frames per second gameplay. Prism is scheduled for release on PC in December, but in the meantime, it's being played publicly, that's a tongue twister, on Twitch. This is happening through the Twitch Plays Pokemon channel, where viewers can input commands in chat that are carried out in-game. The stream has been going on for about 2 days as of this writing, having kicked off on October 9th. Now, the story goes on to say that being a fan of the game makes use of the being a fan game that makes use of the Pokemon IP, there will undoubtedly be concerns that lawyers for Nintendo and or the Pokemon Company will take action and shut it down. Mac, what do you think is going to happen with this game? It's already up. People are already playing it, but am I asking the obvious question?
Well, you know, the thing of it is that so many fan games using the IP, so many remakes have flown below the radar for a long time, and that's kind of been their saving grace when they've, because a lot of fan games haven't had the hammer of the cease and desist brought down on them.
Right.
Precisely because they've flown below the radar. But this is a game that's opening up with a Twitch Plays Pokemon, which I don't get. I don't get it. Call me old, call me out of touch, but I don't get the Twitch Plays stuff. Just doesn't work for me. But it's opening up with a pretty strong forward showing of, hey, look, here I am.
Look what I can do.
Like it's a, I feel like it's kind of a bullseye that the creator has, kind of painted a bullseye on the game by opening up with a strong launch like that. But we'll see. Who knows? Nintendo's been catching a lot of flack for the way that they came down on another Metroid 2 remake and other things for like fan-made Zelda stuff. Mm-hmm. So,
I feel really bad. I feel really bad for the people or the person who has worked on this game. 8 years in the making. You don't want to just make a game for 8 years and then keep it to yourself. Even if you want it to be free to play and just take donations, I guarantee you want your community to be able to play it. You want people to be able to experience this labor of love that you put time into. So hopefully Nintendo has a heart, or maybe they just turn a blind eye and we'll see what happens. I doubt it, though.
Yeah, same here.
Next news story is on Game Informer. It says Overwatch, which is one of my favorite games, celebrates 20 million accounts with the first ever PvE event. Halloween loot boxes. That's kind of a weird title. How popular is Overwatch? It says since its launch last May, players have created 20 million accounts, according to Blizzard. Not bad for a brand new competitive shooter that naysayers claimed, quote, lacks content, unquote. To celebrate this achievement, Blizzard just dropped the first ever PvE brawl called Junkenstein's Revenge. This wave-based event allows up to 4 players to team up to take down a mad scientist and his minions. Overwatch is also getting a cosmetic makeover for Halloween. Starting today, all loot boxes have been replaced with glowing jack-o'-lanterns that contain more than 100 new costumes. Highlight intros, profile icons, sprays, victory poses, and emotes. You can see them in action in the video on this story on Game Informer. Mac, I love games where the viewers or where the developers continue to support them with free content after release. I think that's a huge part of keeping the community active. So
absolutely. I mean, there's nothing like getting up in the morning and going to check out a game only to notice that it's been 16 months since there's been any patches
and people are hacking it and running rampant and using aimbots. And no one has done anything to stop it. I hate that.
Yep. So and this is why Maction avoids competitive play.
Now, but to be clear, they did just add a PvE mode. And I know Overwatch isn't your thing because it is a competitive shooter. But they're trying to have something for everybody. Blizzard's supporting the game really well. Next news story is on Game Rant. I think you guys will all find this one interesting because we were all gamers in 2014. We all remember that dreaded Christmas day, that dreary Christmas day when you got on your game console to play a game, and Xbox Live was down for everybody. We remember this.
Oh, yeah.
If you're an Xbox gamer.
We did, back before we did this podcast, Two Nerds in a Pod, back when we were just doing this as a gaming talk show in its incipiency, we talked about this.
We did.
Way back in the day.
We did. We covered it. We were there on the front lines. This is on Game Rant. It says 2 members of Lizard Squad hacker group arrested. Thank you, whoever caught them. Thank you. Christmas Day 2014 was anything but perfect for many gamers who were hoping to celebrate the occasion with a little online gaming on their shiny new console, but were instead met with error messages after a DDoS attack from Lizard Squad crippled both Xbox Live and PSN. I had to read that with passion. However, those same disappointed gamers can rest a little easier, albeit 2 years later, knowing 2 members of Lizard Squad are now headed to jail. Do not pass go, do not collect 200. These boys are going straight to jail. The story says it's important to note that 2 Lizard Squad members are not directly tied to the Christmas PSN and Xbox Live outage. They are simply known members of the hacker group who did take credit for the DDoS attack in 2014 and many other game-related service outages. The individuals in question are Zachary Bukta of Falston, Maryland, and Bradley Van Wellem Van Roo, I can't pronounce that, of Leiden, the Netherlands, who were brought in on charges of conspiring to damage computers. Both Bukta and Willem Van Roo are teenagers. The 2 Lizard Squad members are the latest quote-unquote casualties in a war against cyber terrorism that started with an investigation into the L's phone harassment service. So anyway, guys, these people
if I may, real quick, Mr. Nice Guy, I object to the flagrant misuse of the term casualty. Also, the flagrant misuse of the term cyber warfare. This is humbug. There were no casualties in this war.
Yeah, I agree.
Except for my need, my hope to play games on Christmas Day.
Yeah, and I just don't get how someone could be so brilliant as to take down a whole gaming network and not put it to good use. Just use your talents and put it to good use. You could work for the FBI. You could work for Sony or Microsoft. There's many ways. If you're that smart, you could put together a resume, a portfolio. You could get a job working for one of these companies. Instead, they just choose to ruin people's fun. For what? So they could get arrested 2 years later? It's not like they made money doing it. All they did was make Sony and Microsoft step up their security game. That's all that happened. That was the only result. We have some more news stories, guys. Once again, this is 2 Nerds in a Pod. Welcome to the stream. Glad to have you here. Now, our next story, Maction, is something that I think you may be interested in. I know I'm interested in it, and it deals with the Nintendo NX. This story is on Express UK. Now, as you guys know, I'm excited for the Nintendo NX, but Nintendo has not revealed any information about it, or very, very little information. This story says the Nintendo NX is still on schedule for a March 2017 date, according to a huge new leak on Reddit. And this is a new story, not the previous one we covered. It says, as previously reported, a large retailer leak hints that the console will indeed have a handheld component, which we knew, something which will allow users to interact with the game on the go. With the Nintendo NX reveal date coming soon, marketing materials suggest a Super Mario title. Did I say Mario? Super Mario title will launch with the console, which is said to release with 4 titles on deck. Interestingly, despite fears that the Nintendo NX will be delayed, retailers will reportedly receive their demo units in February, a month before the proposed March release date. I had a pop-up on my screen. Let me close that bad boy. The Nintendo NX is said to cost $299 US, although there will be a bundle available for $399, and you know you're going to have to get that bundle if you want everything you need. So, Mac, I want to ask your thoughts on the price, man. Now, the PlayStation 4 debuted at about $400, and I believe the Xbox One was $500. Nintendo NX coming out for $299, but with a bundle for $399. Reasonably priced? Too low, too high? What do you think?
Oh, I think it's pretty reasonably priced. As we know, Nintendo has they've dropped hints that they are trying their best to compete based on software rather than hardware. Hence, they've been very, very closed-mouthed about hardware this whole time, and they've basically admitted in interviews and such that they have no interest in trying to compete for those high graphics. Another item from that leak, because I actually read it as well, is that there's supposedly going to be 4K support, but that seemed to be just for the for like Netflix and streaming services like that,
absolutely,
rather than the game content itself.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like they've kind of said they're not even going to try going for ultimate power hardware and are going to try and compete strictly on software. So yeah, so I'm a little bit surprised, especially because do you remember that that interview we talked about it a few weeks ago that they said Freddie, our good man Freddie, my body is Freddie. Our good man Freddie said that one of the things that they learned from the Nintendo Wii was that they did not effectively market.
Oh, Reggie Fils-Aimé.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Reggie.
You're okay,
What did I say?
Freddie.
I said Freddie, not Freddie. My body is Reggie. That's it. And so what they said was they didn't effectively market the Nintendo, the Wii U, which is kind of interesting because I feel like they haven't really learned anything because they haven't really effectively been marketing the Nintendo NX.
Exactly.
Which is one of the reasons why all of us have been thinking, yeah, it's going to be delayed because they haven't even started a marketing push.
That's exactly it. Now, go ahead.
So yeah. No. I'm done.
I want to know from people in the chat who's excited for the Nintendo NX, and if you're not, what games, consoles, whatever, are you excited for? Now, speaking of a new console that's going to be coming out, that was a nice segue, or something that's kind of a new console, it's really a peripheral. Let's talk about VR for a minute. We know VR is a big thing right now, and this article comes from Game Rant as well by Rob Gordon. It says, VR is coasting on novelty, according to the Oculus CTO. I got to read this one. It says, Oculus Chief Technology Officer John Carmack suggests that VR developers need to up the ante in terms of the final product, stating that VR is coasting on novelty. It goes on to say, although it has been a long time coming, 2016 truly seems to have been the year in which virtual reality gaming made a major push to become a part of the video game landscape. With 3 heavily funded projects soon to be on the market with the launch of PlayStation VR this week, gamers interested in VR tech have a wealth of options to choose from. However, VR developers are already being pushed to do more on the software side, and the encouragement comes courtesy of John Carmack. Now, I'm not going to go in and read this whole article, but I will read this quote. He says, we are coasting on novelty and the initial wonder of being something people have never seen before, said Carmack at the event, adding that we need to start judging ourselves, stating that the Oculus Rift community development community needs to be harder on itself. What do you think, Mac? Do you think it's coasting on novelty or not?
Well, the thing of coasting is that to coast on something, you've actually got to have some speed in the first place. My particular take on it is that VR still hasn't picked up any steam or started getting much traction at all, aside from, strictly speaking, novelty.
Right.
I mean, sure, we can get Oculus Rift controllers and we can get things like that, but hey, Mr. Nice Guy, when can you get your PlayStation VR?
Tonight at midnight.
Tonight at midnight.
Well, I didn't pre-order it though.
And here's the point. You can't talk about VR is coasting when the first mainstream consumer release hasn't yet happened. So I mean, maybe he, as an industry insider, knows more about the games, but I think it's a little premature for him to pronounce that there's nothing going, that it's coasting. And hasn't made any new games or fresh games or any cool games, when it's like, dude, it just came out for most people. I think the PlayStation VR is where most of the action's going to be at with regard to VR, and so, I mean, we just have to at least get the initial crop of games out before it can even have Steam and therefore be coasting. So I agree. I can see what he's saying. There's some fears there, though, that maybe they won't.
Now, here's the thing. I don't get why people think this is new technology. It is in this regard as far as being this good, but saying VR is new technology would be like saying a PS4 is new technology, because VR existed before. Now, it wasn't the best, but did you ever see that movie, First Kid, that old Disney movie?
Yes.
Now, remember...
with Sinbad?
Yeah, it was Sinbad. And
yeah,
I've seen Sinbad live. He's a funny dude. But regardless, I digress. He at the end of the movie, the kid kind of runs off by himself, goes to the mall, and he gets some cash, and he's playing a virtual reality game in the middle of the mall. He has a headset on. He has little handles, and he's playing it. So VR is really not a completely new thing. We had the Virtual Boy. I remember going to a place called GameWorks in Seattle growing up, and they had virtual reality games. I mean, they weren't what they are now, but VR has existed before. Now, granted, it was pixelated games where you were shooting pixelated robots and things like that, but it has existed, so it's not completely new. That said, I don't think that they are coasting like you said, because anytime a new console or new type of technology comes out, the hardware is never really backed up with the software. And that's just something I've seen. Anyway, we'll keep it moving. We have one more news story real quick, and then we will move on to our next segment. Welcome to the stream, guys. Welcome to the podcast if you're listening to it after the fact. Now, this last story, you guys, I simply want to go over some games that are releasing this week. Obviously, on Monday, a bunch of PlayStation VR games came out, which I don't quite understand, because the VR wasn't going to be out until Tuesday, until Wednesday, actually.
Got to have the software there to support the hardware, Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah, it came out digitally on the PS Store, it looks like. PlayStation VR Worlds, Super Stardust Ultra VR, Thumper, several others. Tuesday, Gears of War 4, huge release for the Xbox One crowd, exclusive to that console. I don't think it's on PC this year. Rise of the Tomb Raider 20-year celebration on PS4 and Xbox One. Metal Gear Solid 5 definitive experience. WWE 2K17 for those of you who like fake sports. Batman Arkham VR, PlayStation VR Worlds, etc., etc. Duke Nukem 3D. Solitaire on the PS4. And as far as other big releases, I don't think I missed anything. Drive Club VR comes out on Thursday. Battlezone for PSVR. And additionally, I read an article that Turok is going to be making a comeback. Someone's going to re-release that. So, good week for games, and that's it for our news this week.
Did you say Solitaire VR?
No, just Solitaire for the PS4. I just read that because I think it's funny that that is still a thing when there's so many ways to play Solitaire without buying it for your PS4.
Yeah, including but not limited to a deck of cards.
Yeah, by yourself.
Yeah,
that's right.
Sorry, that took me totally by surprise. But all right, so that's the news, everybody, and now we're going to move on to the next little segment here. What we have is gaming history. Now that we've looked at what's going on here in the present, we want to take a look at some of the past. Now, this last week, since we were on last, there have been a couple games that came out that have meant a lot to, I can at least say, me, and perhaps Mr. Nice Guy as well. And the first one is Doom 2.
Ooh.
Now, a lot of people remember some of the early first-person shooters often released on PC, but Doom saw a release on, and so did Wolfenstein 3D, saw a release on the Super Nintendo. But for me, growing up, I didn't really have the consoles, just had the computer.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
so what we had was we actually had an IBM 386, which was a heck of a lot of fun, and I remember playing Wolfenstein 3D and having my parents come in and be absolutely shocked at what was going on in the screen. The red pixelated blood, um, and the Germans and the Nazis and the everything all over the place. And so they shut it down. They were like, no, you will not be playing any of these games on this computer. To which I did not really listen. And it started my burgeoning career as a sort of tech guy slash tinkerer, because the first challenge I had to do was to actually try and hide the fact that I was playing these gory, suggestive first-person shooter games
On a
from
television,
from my parents.
not
No,
on
no,
a
it was on-
handheld, not on a handheld,
no, it was on a computer.
or on a computer. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Hard
Not
to
on a
hide.
hand.
Hard to hide.
Yeah, definitely hard to hide. But the secret was timing, making sure that the timing was right, and also hiding it within folders. That was the first trick I picked up, and it's all thanks to Doom 2, because it was about a week later that I got my hands on a copy of Doom 2 thanks to a friend.
Nice.
He passed it on over, and I'm like, dang it. They flipped at Wolfenstein 3D. This is going to be crazy, because there's demons, there's fireballs and pentagrams all over. They're going to think that I'm doing Satan's bidding. It's going to be terrible. And so my first trick I learned, thanks to Doom 2, was to go ahead and nest these folders down into various various other things. So that was the first trick, and I owe that all to Doom 2, which is why Doom 2 holds a special place in my heart. Mr. Nice Guy, any feelings or memories about Doom 2?
I don't, man.
Open to the
I
chat
don't.
as well.
Because, dude, even now I'm a console guy. Back then I was a console guy, so I never really got into Doom.
Mm-hmm.
I played the original a little bit, but never played the sequel. So hearing this story, though, makes me want to go back and play it, invite my parents over, and tell them that I'm not playing it, and try to find a way to hide it, even though I'm a grown man.
Well, there was a time for that, and sadly, it has passed, Mr.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's true.
I think they'd just think you were joking with them.
They
instead
really
of
would.
actually being serious.
They really would.
See, they're on to you.
Yeah, man. So that game came out this week, several
This
years
week.
ago.
In 1994,
Nice.
it was released
1994 was a good year.
for Windows. It was a good year. I believe that's when we had the Nintendo 64, if I'm not mistaken.
No, that was 96. Super Nintendo.
right, yeah.
Super Nintendo was out in 94.
Yeah.
It was a great, great console.
System Shock in 94. Gosh, I'm trying to think of a few others. I could have sworn there was a Final Fantasy game in 94, but that's just off the top of my head. But yeah, 94 was definitely a good year.
Mixed
yeah.
reviews,
And-
mixed feelings in the chat about Doom.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, just really, I mean, the fact of the matter was, I don't think AI has ever been especially good in video games. I think
Nope.
I felt like the biggest leap forward in AI in video games was probably in the Left 4 Dead series.
It was excellent.
That was the first time I felt like, oh hey, these guys are actually helpful. But there's just something super nostalgic for me about Doom 2.
Nice.
Let's see. Here we go. Next one though, and you guys might also have some strong feelings about this, is Warcraft 2.
Ooh.
While Warcraft 2 wasn't the first real-time strategy game that I played, it was definitely the one that had the biggest hold on me. All thanks to being able to play with other people easily. I don't know if you remember this, but I do believe it was the BattleNet edition, which was
Yes.
released in
Yeah,
2000
of course,
this week.
Of course, yeah.
Well, I mean, I remember getting us together, a whole bunch of us, putting the computers down. And back then, it was CRT monitors.
LAN
These things were
party.
this. They were this deep, at least yay tall around. Little boxes, CRT monitors. They were huge, heavy. You would get somebody, usually your parents, to drive you to the
Yep.
LAN party, and you would haul your rig out
That's right.
and put them. And you'd put it down, and then you would fire up the BattleNet edition, and you guys would do your LAN parties. I attribute almost all of my LAN experience is entirely was entirely because of Warcraft 2.
Now, did
there
you
were other,
Age of Empires ever? Were you ever into that game? I gotta know.
I wasn't. I wasn't into Age of Empires 2. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that some of my fellow computer savvy friends actually had like a legitimate copy and a few not so legitimate copies. And that's how we would play it. And because it's one of those things where we don't really get that appreciation these days, or at least I feel like people who are newer to gaming don't have the appreciation that in a lot of ways you were into the games that your friends were into because that's how you got a copy sometimes.
Exactly, yeah.
And for me, that's the only way I got a copy because I was so dang poor. But nowadays I can go onto Steam and pick up whatever I want, what sounds good. But back then it was an experience. It was a bonding experience because
It was like couch co-op. It was like couch co-op.
Yeah, couch co-op. Even the single-player games, because you often got them loaned from a friend and other things, it was almost like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, dude. I remember LAN parties with Unreal Tournament, with, like I said, Age of Empires. I remember in college playing tons of Warcraft 3, loving it. Great, great memories, man. So, that's sweet. Now, it seems like our viewers really have some memories of LAN parties as well, which is great.
Quake 1, Unreal Tournament, you said. Everybody seems to love Warcraft 2, though. So, there was this moment. Did you ever watch that video? It was a satirical video of Kevin Bacon speaking to millennials.
I never saw it.
Okay, well, it's you should look it up after the show. But there's this moment at the end where he's walking out this door, and Kevin Bacon looks at some guys on the street and he's like, "You guys will never know the comfort of parachute pants." As he walks off, and this is one of those things where this is my parachute pants. It's just like I look around at some people today and I go, you may in fact never know the almost spiritual experience of having a LAN party.
Even now, if they have them, they have laptops. You know what I mean? People have super powerful laptops.
Yeah.
If they want to play in the same room together, you know what I mean? But I don't think that most people do. I think they just do it online with Steam or whatever. So
yeah, and I mean it's good, but there's something about being in the same room, that energy. It's just anyway. But there you go, laid for all of you to see. A trip down memory lane. That is what we were pleased to have in this past week, in past years of gaming.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for all of your comments, guys. Quick reminder, this is Two Nerds in a Pod. Please hit that follow button if you're new, and check us out on Twitter at Two Nerds in a Pod. We're going to be more active on Twitter, and these are going to go up on iTunes as soon as I can figure out how that works. But guys, it's time for our next segment, which is the viewer question of the week. Week. I was trying to make it sound like I was echoing. This comes from Whiteside TV, and he wants to know, and this is something I really don't know about, so I'm going to have to kind of speculate. He says, what do you think about the PS4 controller having Bluetooth issues on LAN? Now, I didn't know that it did, but I'm still going to try to field this question. Mac, do you want me to handle this first, or do you want to...
Oh, no, I think I can speak somewhat about this.
Yeah.
So the fact of the matter is any wireless communication. This was a fun thing that the first time I went to the CTIA wireless convention, that was kind of brought home to me a bit, because any wireless communication has to be kept within a specific band, right?
Sure.
And sometimes that band doesn't have much space. This was one of the reasons why they changed things over digital programming over the airwaves back. I guess that would have been 2008 or something like that when they changed that up. So when you're talking about wireless communication, you've got a band, and the more and more devices that you get around operating on the same band, the more connection issues you're going to have.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know if like there is a problem with PS4 controllers, when you can have a bunch of things around. But I do know that when Mr. Nice Guy and I, for example, went to E3 and we tried to use the Bluetooth and I tried to use the Bluetooth on my cell phone, I had a heck of a hard time connecting because there were so many Bluetooth devices around. Had trouble connecting to the Wi-Fi hotspots because there were so many Wi-Fi hotspots around. So anytime you stack stuff up, it's just the inherent limitation of the bandwidth. Are there things you can do to make it better? Yes, but at some point in time, you're going to run into something. So, I mean, I don't know if it's something that's unique entirely to PlayStation, because I know I've experienced it in a lot of Bluetooth devices with a lot of other things around.
Yeah, I mean, to speak to Mac's point, this is why they always say, well, why doesn't VR allow us to play wirelessly? Why are all these cords hanging off my VR headset? And I think the reason is because of the latency issues that would happen if it was wireless, right? There'd be a disconnect between the time it sends the message to your headset and the time that you're seeing it. So I didn't know that the PS4 controller had issues with Bluetooth connection or lag or whatever it is. But I will say that anytime I've used a wireless controller on any console, it's been extremely responsive. Which is very impressive when you consider the amount of devices that we all have going on in our homes that could potentially get in the way of it. Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo, even with the Wii, and with the Wii U too, they've done a really good job making those wireless controllers work. So to really answer his question, he wants to know how I feel about it. Generally speaking, I think that it's unacceptable for hardware to not work. I get that sometimes games don't work or need a patch. But I'll make an exception when we're talking about wireless hardware. I think that we kind of have to give companies a little bit of leeway because, like Max said, there's other things that can interfere. So that was our viewer question of the week. Mac, did you have any more comments on that issue? Or
Not really. I think that's it. I do wired if at all possible, precisely because I feel like that's just more reliable. Well, because it is just more reliable, but they do great things with wireless nonetheless, and yeah. So I think that's about it.
perfect.
Yeah. So on to our next segment. This is a segment of the show where we actively want to seek your input on
We
something.
need your opinion.
Indeed, we call it Kick or Kickstart. And so the idea here is that we're going to present a Kickstarter, a gaming-related Kickstarter, and we want to get your impressions on it as to whether or not you think we should kick it, like kick it to the curb, or we should kickstart it. And that is actually send some stuff their way. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the chat so that you guys can look at it on your own devices.
Y'all can click that link.
The Kickstarter, the project is called Lost Ember. And the first thing that it reminds me of as I've been, as I looked through it, was you may or may not recall a PlayStation 2 game by the name of Okami.
Oh, of course.
Of course, it is considered to be an incredibly beautiful game. Okami is also considered to be one of, I know many publications have featured it in their top 100 games of all time lists. I've seen some of it played. It's gorgeous. So yeah, but for those of you who can't navigate to it, and for those of you, of course, listening to this podcast later, I'll give you a little bit more information about it. The tagline is explore the remains of a fallen empire from a wolf's perspective. Control every animal you encounter to uncover your destiny. So in Lost Ember, the point is it's an exploration game. You can interact with and control other animals that you see, although your primary avatar is a wolf. The art style looks really cool, and in it, every various animal that you interact with, much in a sort of exploration-themed game, will open up new areas for you to explore because of their abilities, such as, oh, I don't know, digging through areas as a mole, and so on and so forth. The game itself was inspired by the fact that in Germany, which is Moon Eye Studios, who's doing it, is from Germany. They were actually inspired to do this by the fact that wolves have been like not anywhere in Germany for quite some time, but they've recently kind of come back. And so their inspiration was kind of like, nature will go on after we've all died. So basically, this is about the post-apocalypse.
Wow.
And you're a sentient wolf exploring. So anyway, I encourage you guys to check it out, Lost Ember. But it does look quite lovely.
I'm gonna. Can I give my 2 cents on what I think?
Absolutely.
Well, here, let me tell you guys in the chat this first. This is the point where if you were able to click the link or just based on Mac's description, we want you to vote. Do you think that we should kick this to the curb, or do you think that we should kickstart it? Now, we're not saying that we will necessarily donate or that you should, but do you think this is a project that deserves funding? If so, say kickstart it in the chat. If you think it's booty, if you think it's trash, say kick it in the chat. We just want to know what you think. Now, in just clicking this link, Mac, and looking at it, it looks like it's going to be on Xbox One, Windows, and PS4. It uses the Unreal 4 engine, as many games do, and it looks like it has virtual reality capability.
Mm-hmm.
Or it will.
That is certainly one of the things that they've said that they're going to be going to have it in there. They said that they've already play tested it on the Vive and the Oculus Rift, and they think it's fantastic. But while it's not necessarily at its core a VR game, that it works really well in VR.
But that impressed me, though, the fact that they've already tested it, which means that they've already made a version of the game that's playable. They're not waiting for you to throw your money at them before they actually start working. They didn't just put together an awesome video. This is a very detailed Kickstarter page for Lost Ember. That the first thing that impressed me was that they've already tested it. The second thing is that the soundtrack is being made by, it says, Craig Connor and Will Morton, former music director and dialogue supervisor at Rockstar Games. So, I mean, they have some legitimate industry people working on this who are experienced in making successful games, and they're not sparing any detail. So, my vote is that that this should be kickstarted, and I'm excited to see what comes of it. That's my vote, is to kickstart it.
All right. It looks like, for the most part, everybody's going with the kickstart it. However, I'm going to be the dissenting vote, and I'm going to say kick it.
Really?
Because,
why?
Hang on. My number one rule, no matter how appealing something looks, is that if I don't have a playable demo to try out at the time that they're asking for money, that I will not kickstart it myself. Okay. So, for me personally, I'm going to stick to my hardline ruling there, because even though I agree on every point, it looks beautiful, that I'm impressed with everything that they say that they've done with it, and I'm going to take them completely at their word with regard to that. But that I don't have a playable demo to try out. I don't have something to try. So I'm going to say no on this one.
I understand. Now, it's cool that we have a lot of different people voting. I still think this should be kickstarted. I want to see it kickstarted. I'm going to check it out later. I would love to see this on PlayStation 4. I think it's weird that they tested it on the Oculus Rift, and they didn't mention anything about potentially putting it on the PSVR, which obviously isn't out yet. But I think that if they're going to put it on PlayStation, they should give it VR capability and make it clear whether or not they're going to do that. Now, I didn't check prices as far as what you get for donating, but I'm going to still say kick it, and we respect all your votes. Max, should we move on to our next segment, my friend?
Yes, indeed, but I will say one last thing.
Absolutely.
Nope, actually, I strike that from the record. On to the next segment.
You sure?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it was going to be silly anyway. Let's go for it.
Oh, man, we like silliness, but we'll move on, guys. This next section is one of my favorite sections of the show. It's time, boys and girls, for our Dummy of the Week. Dun, 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 dun. If you guys are watching this later, hearing this later, you're not seeing Mac do the Carlton dance right now.
Sorry, you got to make it to the live taping.
You got to come to the live stream, which, by the way, is every Tuesday, 9 p.m. Central Standard, 8 p.m. Mountain Standard. This story is on mychamplinvalley.com. I'm not going to read the title, but I'm just going to read the story. This took place in Williston, Vermont, and I'm getting pop-ups on my screen. Let me close that bad boy. It says, Williston police say a man who has not one, not two, but 120 previous criminal charges and 84 criminal convictions was arrested for breaking into a car and stealing laptops at Best Buy. According to police, they first responded to the call Monday morning about a vehicle that had been broken into and items were stolen from it. The vehicle was parked at the Vermont Tech dorm building. Investigators say they followed a trail. Now, this is where it gets funny. Investigators say they followed a trail of items to the stairway of the third-floor dorm where they found David Foy, 43 years old, of Burlington, sleeping on top of something that was stolen from the broken-in vehicle. Police say that Foy was issued a citation for unlawful trespass, unlawful mischief, and petty larceny. Later on the same day, not tomorrow, not yesterday, the same day, they got a call from Best Buy that a man was trying to take off the security devices from a laptop. Officials say the same man, not a different man, not his identical twin, the same man was also at a service counter trying to return 3 laptops for a refund. According to police, the man, Foy, was denied the returns and was accused of stealing the laptops. Police found Foy outside the Christmas tree shop with 3 laptops and worth $600. Police say Foy was taken into custody for retail theft and false pretense. Officials say he was out on furlough, which after Monday was revoked. So, guys, there's a lot of dumb things in this Dummy of the Week story. First of all, this guy already had 120 criminal charges and 84 criminal convictions. So a pretty good ratio of him being convicted, 84 out of 120, for all the things that he has done wrong. Yet he still didn't learn. Plus, he made it easy for the police to find him because he left a trail of the items. Like he was some kind of thieving Hansel and Gretel, just leaving a path for them to come find him. And then, he did try to return the stolen items to Best Buy without a receipt in hopes of getting cash. So, Mr. Was it Moy or Foy? Mr. Foy, David Foy, age 43, you are our Dummy of the Week. Mac, if you have anything you want to say about this, I'm open to hear it. If you want to maybe come to his defense, I know you're a very caring individual.
No, there's no defending this. That is just straight up hilarious, Mr. Nice Guy. That is well worth the distinction of Dummy of the Week. And bless you, sir, if you were watching this or hearing this podcast, bless you. I could hardly imagine a more delightful thing that you could have done than do all that just so that you could provide us with fodder.
We appreciate it. It seems unfeasible, so I posted the link in the chat in case anybody's questioning. But that is our Dummy of the Week. That's it, you guys. We have one more segment, though, right, Mac?
Oh, yes, indeed we do. And this is actually called Legalese. So, as you may or may not be aware, in the real world as we live, sometimes there are lawsuits. There are things that go on that may impact and often, have an effect on what we are able to buy as far as video games, what we're able to play, and where we're able to play them. So this Legalese story, though, is a little bit of a look back in time, mostly because there wasn't any especially good Legalese stories from this week. It's been a quiet week. Nobody's tried to, sue somebody, somebody small for something ridiculous in the video gaming world. Nobody's tried issuing a subpoena for 100 customers on Steam so that they could sue them for saying mean things.
Right.
So frankly, I've had to dig deep. But I want to give you guys a look into probably one of the most famous
Let's hear it.
video game cases in the past. And it's Universal City Studios versus Nintendo. You may know them, of course, as Universal Studios. Back in those days, their official name was Universal City Studios versus Nintendo. The subject of the lawsuit was Donkey Kong. So in the lawsuit, Universal City Studios versus Nintendo, Universal Studios alleged that the game Donkey Kong was in violation of their copyrights on King Kong, and that Nintendo was of the necessity of obtaining a license from Universal Studios to use Donkey Kong, or be sued. So this went back and forth a lot, and I'm not going to bore you with too many of the details about Lincoln, the head of Nintendo at the time, hired John Kirby, who had won the cases for PepsiCo and things like that. But rather, just to focus on the most important and pertinent bits.
Side note: isn't John Kirby where we got Kirby's Dream Land from? The name Kirby?
No, I don't believe so.
I apologize.
No, John Kirby was just an attorney that they hired. I'm not sure where the name Kirby comes from, but you know what? It could have been. We'll just go with that because that's a neater story, Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah.
It's a neater story. Well, so what happened was that the trial lasted seven days. Universal argued that the name Donkey Kong was going to be confused with King Kong, and that the plot of the game closely followed the plot of the movie enough that it was clear infringement on the film. Kirby's responsibility then, he turned around, Kirby, the lawyer on behalf of Nintendo, pointed out some big differences between Donkey Kong and King Kong. Barrels, fireballs, an Italian plumber, simple stuff. And this was the coup de grace in that particular case, was that in a previous lawsuit in 1975, Universal Studios had taken another film company to court so that they could make a King Kong film themselves in 1976, wherein the Universal Studios lawyers showed that the rights to the King Kong character and the original King Kong novel had not been renewed, so the story fell into the public domain, and therefore Universal Studios could make that remake and didn't have to get a license from RKO General in order to make their 1976 remake. And so the plot and the character were public domain as proved by Universal Studios in 1976, which was the big nail in the coffin when they tried to sue Nintendo. And when Nintendo brought up, hey guys, didn't you just 10 years ago prove that this was all public domain anyway? The judge gave this the guy's name was Judge Sweet, and his ruling was given as such. Throughout this litigation, Universal knew as a result of the RKO litigation that it had no rights to any visual image of King Kong from the classic movie or its remake. Nonetheless, Universal, when it seemed beneficial, made sweeping assertions of rights, attempting to extract license agreements from companies incapable, or unwilling to confront Universal's profit center.
Now, guys, that's a great story, and we do like to fact-check ourselves live on the air. So, Mac, I did look it up, and I wasn't pulling that out of thin air. My gaming knowledge is just so deep, man. I got to brag a little bit. I did look up John Kirby, and this is straight from Wikipedia. It says, John Kirby is an American attorney who was employed by the law firm Latham & Watkins, blah, blah, blah. It says... And it goes on. It says, in this case, one of his most well-known cases was Universal City Studios Inc. versus Nintendo. In this case, he defended Nintendo against litigation from Universal Studios in a dispute involving a round of video game Donkey Kong, in which Universal blah blah blah.
Second paragraph. There you go. In thanks, yeah.
Yeah. Kirby won the case, a landmark victory for Nintendo by presenting evidence. Yeah. In thanks for aiding them, Nintendo gave Mr. Kirby a $30,000 sailboat christened the Donkey Kong, along with exclusive worldwide rights to use the name for sailboats. Shigeru Miyamoto also stated that the name of the character Kirby was chosen in honor of John Kirby. So, guys, that is where Kirby got his name. Fact check.
Well done, Mr. Nice Guy. Yeah. I didn't even know, and I didn't get that deep in, but yes, it looks like it does. And you know what? I have to imagine if I had a company, a small video game company, and in one of my big first hits, someone tried to do something, and the lawyer I hired did oh, by the way, you guys don't even own the rights because you proved yourselves that it's public domain, and did the mic drop like that, I would name a video game character after it too.
Gotta reward that boldness.
Heck yes. That was awesome. So, I mean, that even itself could have qualified for Dummy of the Week, even though it, happened years and years ago. But nonetheless, it's our little bit of legalese for this particular week.
It's a great story.
A look into that old 1982 lawsuit, Universal Studios v. Nintendo.
Nice. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for tuning in to Two Nerds in a Pod. We have one last segment we do about what we're playing and what we're watching. And Mac, do you want to go first this week, or do you want me to? What do you want to do, man?
Yeah, actually, I want to start off if I can. I want to talk a little bit about what I've been watching. You may know that I recently got caught up in The Walking Dead.
Yes.
If you are not caught up in The Walking Dead, I've got good news. AMC has said that every night they're going to run Walking Dead mini marathons from October 16th to October 22nd starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They're going to start with Season 1, Episode 1, run all the way through there until they get back to their daytime stuff, and then the next night pick it up again, leading up to the premiere of Season 7.
So in case you don't need sleep.
Exactly. Just in case you can operate without sleep, you can catch all of The Walking Dead and get back up to where you ought to be.
Now, to be fair, that is awesome, but additionally, it is all on Netflix as well.
Very true, so you could certainly binge watch it if you have no need for sleep on your own time as well.
Yeah, but that's cool. So, Mac, it's fair to assume you've been watching The Walking Dead and you're all caught up. Is that right?
Yes. I'm all caught up.
Sweet.
And I did see that teaser trailer.
Yes.
Where he talks about it's important to have a right hand.
Yeah. I'm excited to know what's going to happen. Now, I obviously love The Walking Dead, but guys, for me this week, Mrs. Nice Girl and I have been watching Arrow Season 4, which just hit Netflix. Additionally, The Flash Season 2 just hit Netflix, so we've been watching that as well, and those have really been what has been sucking up my time. I feel like I kind of like the Marvel shows more than the DC shows, but regardless, I like Arrow and I like Flash. So those are the two shows that have been sucking up my time. And we want to know what you guys are watching as well. In the chat, let us know. I see Flash, Arrow. I see Luke Cage. I see all kinds of cool stuff. Let us know what else you're watching, because we're always open to suggestions. Now, Mac, we're both gamers. I don't know, is that all you watched this week, or did you have other stuff you wanted to share?
Well, I did finish off Luke Cage. I enjoyed it, whereas Galvatron seems to think that Diamondback was kind of a weak villain with terrible lines and overacting. I can't completely disagree, but I kind of felt like that was half the charm, is that, they're drawing on and sort of, I don't know if lampooning's the right word, but they were certainly doing a little bit of self-parody where they were poking fun at their own roots with the they were poking fun at their own roots with the Diamondback character.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. So that's what we've been watching this week. Now, Matt, can I hop into what I've been playing, and then we'll let you take it home? So, guys, we also do play video games, obviously, and people are asking what our names are in the chat, people who may be here for the first time. I'm Mr. Nice Guy 425. Right above my picture is my name of my personal Twitch channel where I stream, and same thing from Action. We both do our respective streams, and we come together once a week for this beautiful peanut butter and jelly, bacon and salami of a combination podcast, Cheez-Its and cheese dip. I'm just throwing random foods together. Guys, we come together. It's a beautiful thing. As far as games that I've been playing this week, I actually hopped on Overwatch and started trying out that Halloween horde mode that they have, and it's a lot of fun, even with randoms. I had a blast playing it. You each pick one of 4 characters that are available, so that there's balance on the team. One person's a healer. There's a tank. There's different types of characters, and it's fun. You know, there's a lot. It's in a little room, but I mean, there's lots of different characters to go shoot up. So I've been playing that. I've been playing NBA 2K. I've had the Super Nintendo set up from time to time, but we just put it in our living room, and so the boys and I, the little nice guys, we've been playing Yoshi's Island and Mario All-Stars and Donkey Kong Country 2, and getting into those old school games that I grew up playing, and they're timeless. My kids love them, so we've been doing that. That's it for me and gaming this week.
Well, for me, I actually had, over the weekend, I had the delight to be given a copy of Diablo 2. And
Nice.
So I fired that up, and I learned a little bit about how to play Diablo 2. It was absolutely a new experience for me, but a good experience. And I have also picked back up playing Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2, which is why it was sort of at the front of my mind with AI, with AI helpers.
On the PC or on the Xbox 360?
Well, I originally played it on the Xbox 360. I mean, you know this, Mr. Nice Guy. You remember those events we would have with Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2.
Yeah.
But for me, I don't have an Xbox 360 anymore, so I just play it on my PC, which I know is a shame because that means that we can't play together.
It's all good, man.
However, if you think your computer can handle it, Mr. Nice Guy, next month is the anniversary of Left 4 Dead, and I'm just saying, I would buy you a copy.
Dude, my computer can handle it. Dude, I have H1Z1, which you never picked up, by the way.
It's true. I still haven't picked that up.
No, it's cool, man. And honestly, I don't know if it'd be your type of game. You should check it out before you buy it.
I'll watch some live streams of it and see.
Yeah, do that.
But okay, then I think I'm going to pick you up a copy of Left 4 Dead, and you know what? In celebration, we should absolutely play it together.
Dude, it'd be fun. It would be fun. We really should. Well, guys, this has been Two Nerds in a Pod, episode 3. Once again, I am Mr. Nice Guy 425.
And I am Maction.
Thank you guys for coming through. Now, please hit us up on the social medias. Our respective Twitch streams are at the top of the screen. Hit us up on Twitter at Two Nerds in a Pod. Next 5 people to follow us on Twitter, Two Nerds in a Pod, will get a follow back. Guys, this has been Two Nerds in a Pod, and I have a dad bod. You guys have a good night. Thank you for coming. We'll see you next week. Same bat place, same bat time. See you later.